Really excited to welcome Martin Kool. Martin leads the UX design team at MediaMonks, managing and leading over 40 designers spread across 9 locations. Not just 9 locations, but also 9 languages, and they come from even more cultures, much like the people that they design for. Martin's team supports clients like Google, Amazon, HP, P&G, McLaren, Adidas, Weber, and many more, with delivering outstanding user experiences through web applications, VR, and installations. Martin also works with all the 130 plus team leads at MediaMonks to share leadership knowledge, inspire with stories, and form a network of support. So let's have a big round of applause for Martin Kool, sharing the new balance of things and how he's managing his team of 40 people with everything that's going around us. Welcome, Martin.
Thank you, Preet. Yeah, thanks for having me here, everyone. Thanks for Adobe for inviting me here. I'm very humbled to be allowed to share my knowledge for you. So let's dive in. You already got the introduction. I'm Martin Kool. I'm the global head of user experience at MediaMonks. My team is about 40 people in the area of UX design, and then they're part of a larger team of 250 creatives, visual designers, UX designers. And like Preet already said, we're quite a diverse team. We're spread across the globe and come from many different locations. So that's the team that I lead. And at MediaMonks, we're a global creative digital production partner. We're often mistaken for an advertising or creative agency, which is a good mistake to make because we are quite brand sensitive. We know how to create strong content. We know how to put some shine on messaging, but we're a little more than that. We're rarely mistaken for digital consultants or systems integrators, which is also a good thing because we're not operating like that exactly. We're a really nice blend. And I have a graph to try and show you. So we sit in the middle of the brand, IT, and digital, where we work with the brand on their messaging, on their strategy, but we also work with IT to make sure that our solutions kind of fit in their security standards and sort of today's best practices. And we sort of mix those two with our digital solutions, which are anything from apps, websites, installations, any digital product we can produce with the people that we have in-house, and any content that we can create with the people that we have in-house. And that is quite a unique blend, and it looks a little bit like this. So for Weber, for instance, we build and develop their website. We build several apps, including their smart grilling experience, which I personally think is a lot of fun, where digital and something as physical as grills and fire and food really come together. It's a nice challenge. We're helping HP build really strongly branded platforms on AEM. So that's a really nice example of how sort of brand and design meets, that really solid Adobe Experience Manager backend, and we're quite capable at doing really good jobs on both sides of that coin. For the US Air Force, we did a really beautiful design on top of a very heavy personalization and segmentation engine, which is quite an exciting project. So we're quite used to doing sort of seemingly normal things with a bit of an edge that requires us to sort of shift gears and really dive into our end consumers and really understand how they would respond to what we're trying to give them. What you'll see, I actually noticed while I was doing the presentation that some of the visualizations look a little bit at what you see on the news these days, so sorry about that. But this is what MediaMonks looks like when you dot us on the map. And what's quite unique about us is that we're one company. So we're not a whole bunch of companies under one umbrella that operate as individuals, but we're one single company, one single P&L. And that means that there's no red tape when we want to work together. So when we work on projects, it's very common to work with a team that's distributed across the globe, and you might have a designer from Mexico and a UX designer from the Netherlands, and then a development team from Buenos Aires. So you would say that when the situation hit us, and we needed to start working from home and started to abandon our office spaces, that we would be quite ready for it, but it was actually still a pretty major change. So that's what I want to talk to you about in this session is how we're working to find the new balance of things with what's happening to us. And I'll take you through some of the changes that I've noticed in my team as we're dealing with this change, and kind of how I and the team are going about sort of responding to that, but also how we're trying to balance things out again. So here's that other visualization. Curves are so hot right now. But this is kind of what it looked like when we started working from home. Because we're a global company, we had the luxury of having offices in areas that kind of suffered from the measures that the governments are taking to combat the situation. So Shanghai was one of our first offices where people had to go home. And that signaled something to the rest of the organization to kind of start preparing for that reality. Which means that when it hit here in the Netherlands, where I'm located, we already had 2 or 3 teams operating from home because we had sent them home pretty much as the way we would send everybody home once the government would decide that needed to happen. So we were already collecting learnings from these teams about what they were running into, really practical stuff, but also things around communication and facilities. So we had some learnings up to that point, which we were able to take into this. But one of the things that we noticed immediately was that meetings exploded. Like, my team is very engaged with each other, and because we have we are a production company. We work with on very many projects for many different clients. So as a single UX designer, you tend to be part of UX. You will have a UX team, a smaller team within UX with a lead. You will have one or several project teams that you're part of, and you might have some sort of extracurricular activities with people as well. For example, some people are working on internal design systems, things like that. So many groups that you're part of that you need to communicate with. And what we noticed was that just the idea of stepping out of the location that you are in and kind of losing that physical contact with people made us kind of really heavily ramp up our meeting. So you started to see a lot of stuff like this, which is really good, because I think rituals are very important on top of all of the collaboration and productivity meetings. So we would have surprise birthday bashes. We would have things like non-mandatory coffee corners where people can just kind of come into the video chat and have a fun conversation with each other. In the example here, somehow the whole thing turned into this Telcel-like commercial of Nanette, our creative operational manager, who had this new kitchen appliance that she was really excited to show us. So this is a lot of fun, and this is really good. And we also think this is very important, especially because the situation that we're in also weighs quite heavily on sort of the mental side of things, and the fact that everybody goes home to a situation that's now a little bit less controlled, and that they weren't really ready to work from. So some people will be at home dealing with families who are struggling with sort of the stress of all of that, while on the other side you have maybe people sharing a room who need to work there with their roommates, or who are literally quite isolated and kind of need to deal with the isolation and the boredom of being stuck in your house and having to work from there. So this was quite important to us. But after so many team check-ins and another fun SnapLens, like if you're not using SnapLens, you need to Google it and install it on your computer. But you start to kind of it starts to wear out a little bit. And we had people who had the majority of their day kind of filled with meetings and really struggling to get the job done. So one of the things that we learned from there, and this, I did not only apply this to my team, but this was also very significant observation that I saw in the overall team leads at MediaMonks. We have sessions every month where all 130 of us get together to sort of share experiences, and we noticed that the people who were able to kind of look at all of these meetings and start folding them into folding them into each other and condensing them and thinking about them differently, that those teams were starting to do really well. So the thing that I learned from this that I wanted to share with you is that, you know, it's really good, especially as a design leader in situations like this, to let people identify and solve their own problems in their own way, which creates a lot of creative things that you might not have thought of, and creates a lot of interesting initiatives that you can start to use for any other situations that you're dealing with. But you have to provide that counterbalance as well. And when things go too far and there's too much good that it starts to get away in all of the other stuff that we're trying to do, then you also need to kind of slam on the brakes a little bit and tell people to maybe consolidate a few meetings, or instead of booking something for half an hour, book something for 15 minutes, and be very explicit about when you have to attend or when you don't. So that's one thing, and the thing to take away from that is really that counterbalance. Like, as a design leader, if there's too many meetings, then provide that counterbalance in saying, you know, maybe think about it again. If there are too few meetings, then, you know, poke your people to see if they're even, if they feel like they're connecting enough and if that's going well. Another question, obviously, that I think it looks very familiar to many of you, is that we get a lot of questions that start with this, like, do we have a license for, or do we have an account for? Because, as designers, especially as digital designers, we rely a lot on our tooling, and being taken into this working from home situation kind of changes the game a little bit. So here, one of the things that popped up really quickly was, real-time collaborative design tools like Figma or Adobe XD. And this is really good, and I really encourage all of my people to explore these things and work on these things. But, it comes with a word of caution, and that is the fact that when you introduce these things, they also come with their own set of rules. They come with their own set of, rules of engagement and processes that you need to follow. And you have to be careful that an essentially good tool doesn't turn into a huge time and energy drain for the team, because they suddenly not only have the challenges that they have day to day, but now they also have to figure out with each other how they're going to form new processes around the fact that everybody can peek into your file at the same time. How do you make sure that people aren't looking at things that are draft, that you don't want them to respond to yet, or these things? And especially in that moment of transition, you might not be aware that all of these things are in play, and it can create quite tricky situations, and also put stress on people that seems to come out of nowhere, because they're not expecting to be doing anything that's gonna become a problem, and then when it does, it surprises them a little bit. On the other hand, there are also situations where there are very obvious physical processes, like being together with a client in a room and doing a workshop, that literally no longer can take place. So Mural, I think, is one of the tools right now that's really skyrocketing, simply because they're addressing a need that I think a lot of design-oriented organizations and other organizations actually have. For us, for instance, this worked really well. Not because of the tool necessarily, even though it's a good tool, and it's very accessible, even for people without design backgrounds. It's not very intimidating. But the way we work with Mural is the same way we work with workshops when we do them physically. Like, they're very bespoke processes. They get designed and tailor-made every time we do a project and every time we go out to a client to do this. So to do that really bespoke process again, but then with this tool, wasn't such a big leap. So many of the processes that we have regularly already prepared us for doing something like this. So this is a much more seamless approach, while, for instance, Figma and XD were using much more on a trial base, and we're a little bit careful not to, lock someone in into that and having to abandon the workflow that he's used to and then deal with all of the consequences coming out of it. So we're taking a little bit more time with that. So the learning here for me really was experiment heavily. This time is super valuable because everybody's forced out of their comfort zone. Everybody's uncomfortable. And because of that, they're also more resilient to venture off of the beaten path, but they're also more acceptable to solutions that they would otherwise not consider. Adam Fry-Pierce, I think on Tuesday, talked about this as well, that one of the insights that they had from the Design Leadership Forum was that this situation that we're in really started to level the playing field. And we noticed that with, for instance, our clients as well, and even with our internal teams, where the pressure to kind of, for instance, do a workshop in person and fly people out there and be in a room and all be together, carried some weight before this situation. And now, because we can't, people are doing workshops remotely, and they're going surprisingly well, and they're being very much appreciated, which you've heard this in a couple of sessions during this week as well, will sort of start inspiring us for the weeks and months to come. And when we can actually have a physical workshop again, people might, because of the experience that they've had, choose not to have one and do it remotely. So, doing this it sounds easy, but looks pretty hard. Like there are a lot of factors to keep into account. And now you only got 2 examples from the things that I've seen in my team. But within your teams, whether you're a design leader or someone in a team, the challenges are different all the time. And being able to navigate them can be quite daunting, also because the situation around it is so fluid and tricky. So the thing that I can give you is a word, a concept that you also have heard a lot this week, I think, and that is altitude. Altitude really matters, especially if you're a design leader, and it's really about being able to change your perspective on the situation. It's super good in a situation like this to be very close to your team and to know what they're dealing with and to know what they're trying to solve or what they're trying to struggle with. But it also puts your focus on what's immediately important. That can be really good, but it also kind of limits your vision a little bit. While taking some altitude, make sure that you can kind of look over the bump and sort of see what needs to happen after and what kind of situation you're creating for later by the decisions that you're making today. And as a leader, I think this was one of the most valuable things to learn, not even just as a leader, but also as a UX designer, to be able to very purposefully decide how far back you're going to step and look at the situation, and being able to block out some of the details so that they don't overwhelm you is a very, in my experience, tricky skill to learn. But once it becomes obvious to you that that's in play, you really start to be able to control that. So by doing this, you can start making tough decisions about, for instance, how you're going to balance out available budgets, which are under pressure right now, and new tools that you actually need, or even how you can consolidate too many meetings into a healthier schedule. Because after the bump, after all of this is done, we're going to have a new balance of things, and it's really good because we're going to be doing a lot of really good stuff that makes a lot of sense, but we're also going to be doing some stuff that really doesn't. And as a design leader, I think if you're able to keep your eyes on that horizon and kind of regularly reflect that to your team and provide that counterbalance to them and to the things that they're doing and struggling with today, that you can make sure that the course that you're setting isn't just influenced by the day-to-day reality, but really puts you in the driver's seat of shaping up what your team and your way of working is going to be, in the next couple of months, but maybe even the next couple of.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Martin. That was really, really informative and getting a sneak peek, into how you've been handling the things with your team at MediaMonks, and love the team photos around folks sharing their kitchen appliances and all of these things. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
it's great. It's great. And that's also like the edge of the blade. Like those meetings are really so good, but they can
Right.
also turn very quickly in such a distraction. That balancing that out is just, yeah, it's rough. It's rough. Also because, at some point someone just needs that a little bit more than
Mhm.
someone else. So especially the non-mandatory stuff is our gold mines. They're beautiful.
Oh wow. Great. Thank you so much for your talk and for just sharing everything that you did this morning. It was super, super informative.
Absolutely. I hope people take good things away from it, and find me in the Slack channel if you want to ask any follow-up questions, and I'll try to answer as many as possible.
Great.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Martin.
Cool. Thank you.
Have a good one. Thank you.